A gardener in Nagano keeps a small clay bowl by her back door. Inside it, a spoonful of rice bran, a splash of water, nothing else. Every morning before breakfast, she carries that bowl out to her vegetable patch, sets it down between the cabbages, and walks away. By the next morning, the bowl is full of snails. Not one or two, sometimes 20. She empties it into a bucket of salt water, rinses the bowl, and puts fresh bran in it that evening. Her cabbages have no holes in them. Her neighbor 2 doors down sprays pellets every 2 weeks and still finds his lettuce chewed to lace by July. That difference is the whole video. Snails are not stupid animals. They are slow, but they are extremely good at finding food, and everything most people do to fight them in a garden works against slowness instead of with it. You spray a barrier, the rain washes it away in 3 days. You scatter pellets, the survivors just relocate 6 feet over and start again next week. You set out a saucer of beer because some blog told you snails love beer, and you wake up to find you have thrown a party for every slug and snail in a 50-foot radius, including ones that were never planning to visit your garden in the first place. Beer traps do not reduce your snail population, they import your neighbors. Japan solved this problem the same way it solved the weed problem and the cockroach problem. Not by fighting the animal, but by understanding exactly what the animal wants and using that against it with almost no effort. Before we go on, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far this story travels. And if you're loving it so far, join the family by hitting subscribe, because tomorrow we've got something special lined up just for you. Let's start with the biology, because it explains everything that follows. A garden snail does not have eyes that see the way ours do. It navigates almost entirely through smell and moisture. Its foot, the muscular underside it moves on, is covered in mucus glands, and that mucus is not just lubrication. It is a chemical trail, a scent map the snail leaves behind and can follow back home. A snail that finds a good food source will return to that exact spot night after night, tracing its own slime trail like a commuter following the same road to work. This is why a single cabbage plant gets destroyed while the one beside it is untouched. The snail is not randomly wandering the garden. It has found something worth returning to, and it is coming back on a schedule. Snails are also nocturnal for a very specific reason. Their bodies lose moisture fast in direct sun and dry air, so they hide in cool, damp, dark places during the day, under stones, under mulch, in the gap beneath a fence post, and they only come out to feed once the temperature drops and the humidity rises. That means a snail problem you see in daylight is really a nighttime problem you are only catching evidence of. The bran bowl trick works because it exploits both of these facts at once. Fermenting rice bran gives off a smell that snails find irresistible, far more attractive than your lettuce, and it is placed at ground level in a shaded, damp spot that already matches everything a snail is looking for during the day. You are not hunting the snail. You are inviting it to a location you control, then collecting it before it ever finds your vegetables. Here is how to actually run this tonight. Take a shallow dish, a jar lid works, an old yogurt container cut down works, anything with low sides a snail can climb into easily. Fill it with a spoonful of rice bran, mixed with just enough water to make a loose paste, almost like wet sand. If you don't have rice bran, oatmeal or cornmeal mixed the same way works nearly as well, though rice bran ferments faster and the smell travels further. Place the dish at soil level near the plants that have been getting eaten, ideally somewhere shaded and a little damp, next to a fence, under a bush, along the base of a wall. Then walk away and let the night do the work. Snails will travel a genuinely surprising distance for fermenting bran, sometimes 10 or 15 feet, following the scent gradient in the night air the same way your kitchen fills with the smell of dinner from the front door. By early morning, before the sun climbs high enough to dry them out, they will still be there, clustered around and inside the dish, because they associate that smell with food and have no reason to leave while it is still there. This is the part that separates the Japanese method from a beer trap. A beer trap kills the snail where it drowns, which means every snail that visits but doesn't fall in wanders back into your garden with a fresh memory of exactly where the food smell was strongest, right next to your tomatoes. The bran bowl doesn't kill anything on its own. You collect the snails by hand while they're still gathered in one place, at first light, and you decide what happens next. What happens next is where a second piece of old household wisdom comes in. And it's the part of this video where I need to correct something you've probably heard. Salt kills snails almost instantly through simple osmosis. It pulls water out through their mucus layer faster than their body can replace it, and the reaction looks dramatic, foaming, shrinking, the whole thing over in under a minute. This is where the common advice stops, and it's also where the common advice becomes a problem. Pouring salt directly onto snails in your garden bed, or scattering it around your plants as a barrier, does not stay where you put it. Rain moves it into the soil. Salt buildup in soil damages root systems, disrupts the microorganisms your plants depend on, and can take years to fully wash out, especially in a raised bed or container where drainage is limited. A gardener who salts their beds to kill snails is often, a season or two later, wondering why nothing grows well in that corner anymore. The traditional solution is to keep salt entirely out of the garden and use it only in a bucket, well away from any soil or root system it might reach through runoff. Fill a bucket with water, add a generous handful of salt, maybe 2 tablespoons per liter, and drop the collected snails in after your morning BRAN bowl check. It's fast, it's humane by the standards of pest control, meaning it's over in seconds rather than the slow, drawn-out death salt causes when sprinkled directly on a snail's body, and none of that salt ever touches a single root, a raised bed, or the soil biology you spent a season building up. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. If you'd rather not use salt water at all, there's an even older option that some households still prefer: feeding the snails to chickens or ducks, if you keep any, which happily eat them and get a genuine nutritional boost from the calcium in the shells. The same reason commercial poultry feed sometimes includes crushed oyster shell, or simply relocating them somewhere they can't easily return from, like a wooded area at least a quarter mile away, since anything closer and a snail can, slowly but eventually, find its way back to a garden it already knows produces food. Garden snails move only a few meters a day under normal conditions, but they are patient, and a relocation inside their existing territory rarely sticks for more than a week or two. Collection deals with the snails already living in your garden today. Prevention is the part that means you stop having this problem at all, season after season, and it's built around the same underlying idea that ran through the weed method and the cockroach method covered earlier in this series. Make the environment unreadable and unwelcoming to the pest before it ever arrives, rather than fighting it plant by plant after it's already settled in. Snails and slugs produce a mild electrical reaction when their slime touches copper, something to do with an interaction between the metal and the salts naturally present in their mucus, a bit like a tiny battery forming across their own foot. Nobody claims it's a large shock, but it is clearly unpleasant enough that they will not cross it if there's any other option available to them. Copper tape, sold at most garden centers and home centers for a few hundred yen a roll, wrapped around the rim of a planter or the base of a raised bed, creates a barrier snails consistently avoid crossing, even when the plant on the other side is exactly what they're looking for. Old copper wire, uncoated, laid in a simple ring around a single vulnerable plant, does the same job for a fraction of the price. The catch is that the barrier has to be complete and unbroken all the way around, with no gap at a corner or seam, and it has to stay genuinely clean, since a layer of dirt or fallen leaf debris bridging across the copper lets a snail cross without its slime ever actually touching the metal underneath. The second layer is texture. A snail's foot is soft, exposed tissue with no shell protection, and anything sharp, gritty, or abrasive is genuinely painful for it to drag itself across. Crushed eggshells scattered in a ring around a plant work reasonably well, though they need to be crushed fine rather than left in large chunks, and reapplied after rain, since even a light shower can pack loose shell fragments down into a surface soft enough for a determined snail to cross without much trouble. Diatomaceous earth, a fine powder made from the fossilized remains of ancient algae, is considerably more effective and is what most serious Japanese vegetable growers reach for first. Under a microscope, it looks like broken glass, all sharp edges and microscopic points, and at a snail's scale, crossing a ring of it is exactly as unpleasant as that description suggests. A ring of food-grade diatomaceous earth around the base of a vulnerable plant Reapplied after rain, since water clumps the powder and reduces its effectiveness almost entirely, keeps that individual plant essentially off limits. The third layer is the one most home gardeners skip entirely, and it's the one that actually solves the underlying problem at its root, instead of simply defending individual plants one ring at a time, removing the daytime hiding spots that let a snail population exist in your garden in the first place. Snails need cool, damp, dark shelter to survive the daylight hours, since direct sun and dry air will kill them within a couple of hours if they're caught without cover. A garden stacked with mulch piled too thick, boards or pots left lying flat on bare soil, decorative stones with gaps underneath, or dense low ground cover growing right up against a building foundation is a garden quietly offering free, reliable housing to every snail nearby. Thinning mulch down to a reasonable 2 or 3 centimeter depth, clearing loose debris off bare soil at the end of each season, and lifting stones and pavers occasionally to break up the gaps underneath. All of this makes a garden a genuinely worse place for a snail to spend its day. And a snail without reliable daytime shelter nearby either moves on to a neighbor's yard or becomes an easy morning catch during your BRAN bowl check, caught out in the open with nowhere left to retreat to before the sun gets high. It's worth saying plainly that none of these 3 layers work in isolation the way a single spray or bait would promise to. Copper stops a snail already on the move from reaching a specific plant. Texture does the same job through discomfort rather than electricity. Neither one reduces how many snails are actually living in your garden, which is why the third layer, taking away the shelter itself, is the one that changes the population over a season rather than just the outcome on any single night. A garden with a healthy population of ground beetles and birds, both of which eat snails and their eggs readily, will also do a portion of this work for free, provided you haven't cleared every scrap of leaf litter that gives those predators cover of their own. The goal isn't a garden with 0 snails ever, which isn't realistic. The goal is a garden where the snail population stays small enough that your vegetables outgrow the damage before it matters. The same quiet, unglamorous kind of balance that runs through every method in this series. Put these 3 layers together and you get a garden a snail simply doesn't want to be in, long before it ever reaches your lettuce. A full routine looks like this. Each evening, set out 1 or 2 BRAN bowls near whichever plants have shown recent damage. Each morning, before the sun is fully up, collect what's gathered in the bowls and drop it in the salt bucket, then refresh the BRAN. Once a week, check your copper barriers for gaps and your diatomaceous earth rings for spots that need topping up after rain. Once a month, do a walkthrough and clear out anything creating unnecessary daytime shelter near your most valuable plants. That's the entire system, and most weeks it takes less time than it took you to read this paragraph. The cost is close to nothing. Rice bran for a season runs a few dollars. A roll of copper tape is a one-time purchase that lasts for years if you keep it clean. A bag of diatomaceous earth costs about the same as a bag of pellets and covers far more ground, without leaving behind anything that poisons the birds that eat a poisoned snail, or the pet that decides to sniff around where pellets were scattered last week. What this method actually asks of you is smaller than what most people assume pest control requires. It doesn't ask you to declare war on every snail in a 5-mile radius. It asks you to remove the reasons a snail would choose your garden over anywhere else, catch the few that show up anyway before they do any damage, and repeat that small routine often enough that it never has the chance to build into a real infestation. The gardener in Nagano isn't fighting a battle every summer. She's just making sure the invitation never goes out in the first place. Try the BRAN bowl tonight if you've got snail damage right now, and let me know in the comments how many you find by morning. That's our story. If you enjoyed it, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. And tomorrow, more stories are waiting for you. Thanks for watching.